So we will continue with our exploration of the text of Amun on the ancient Egyptian religion in his response to his Greek student who had written him a letter with questions and posits concerning the ancient Egyptian religion. And during this time, when Porphyry was writing this letter and Amun was responding, there was a lot of turmoil in Egypt. There was a lot of pressure on the ancient Egyptian religion from outside forces, and the Greeks were making additions to the text, and they actually incorporated like maybe 100 or so new glyphs to the hieroglyphs. And you can see those texts today if you go to the Ptolemaic temples, the temples that were built in Ptolemaic times. You can see and I might show pictures of them next, so you can see the difference in the text. So there was a lot of confusion, and kind of likened it to, if anyone is familiar with the issue with, if you've seen any documentaries on the Chinese invasion of Tibet, and how they were kicking out the monks and destroying the monasteries, and they were kicking out the monks and the nuns and destroying the monasteries, and people had to leave Tibet and flee to India. Uh, that kind of situation was what was going on at this time. So this book gives a special insight. This text gives special insight as Abamun is trying to correct Porphyry's misunderstanding of the teachings. And as we read the foreword to the book published by Dr. Martha Ashby, that there's a lot of religious confusion at the time. And there's a good movie, I think it's called Agora, that illustrates kind of illustrates it well, the problems that were happening. So this is after centuries and centuries of the establishment and the practice of the ancient Egyptian religion. But at this time and later times, there's a lot of pressure. And there's philosophical pressure from the Greeks as they were making certain changes, etc. So last time we left off on the invisible intellections. We were discussing the nature of the symbols, as Abamun had brought up the issue, responding to the deposits made by Porphyry. So we'll go forward. Just as nature, after a certain manner, expresses invisible reasons or productive powers through visible forms, but the fabricated energy of the gods delineates the truth of forms through visible images. And what he's saying here is that that nature, such as plants, animals, etc., expresses a certain energy form of the the spirit, the underlying reality. And because the animal's nature is a visible form, like for example, the god Bes means the visible image of God, or the visible image of the divine. And so the visible image of the divine is all of nature, but nature is locked into a certain geometric and physiological pattern. but you can glean from that certain insights into the nature of the cosmic forces and the cosmic powers. And you can recognize these forces and powers are within yourself through years of meditative practice and if you're in a priest and priesthood, devotion and theurgy. Theurgy is the technical word that means the science of the temples, the science of performing the rituals and the practices of the temples. So these cosmic powers and forces are expressed through nature. And recall the last time we spoke about the problematic issue of faith-based religion, and that cuts you out from the energies and the powers of nature, and then you develop this kind of idea that you're to dominate nature. But when you develop this idea of dominating nature, you remove yourself from the powers of nature, and you don't come into harmony with those powers, and therefore you cannot recognize them within yourself, and therefore you don't lead yourself. You can't be led to enlightenment. So nature is a powerful physical manifestation of the divine if one would only recognize it and realize it. But it's very difficult in this social structure that has been designed for various means, like the expression of greed. That's what this social structure has been developed for. It's difficult to recognize your interconnectivity with the forces of nature. But he's making a distinction here. The fabricative energy of the gods delineates the truth of forms through visible images. And so he is underlining or emphasizing the importance of images and forms of the divinities. If you have the form, if you have the depiction of the divinity, it's a material representation of a kind of energy nexus. And if you go beyond the form and realize the energy nexus, then you come into the truth of what the form is expressing. And the form is expressing this fabricative energy of the divinity of Neter, Paneter, Nebuchadnezzar, through the images that are presented. So the images of the gods and goddesses are not random representations of someone's imagination. They're actually put together by sages to help spiritual initiates to understand something that is beyond what the image is. So there's something under the image that the image is representing that the initiate is to discover about her or himself. So the truth of the energies are represented in the forms and the images. So if you don't have forms and images, you don't have the truth of the energies of the divine. And so again, you're cut off from that deeper inner reality. And what happens is that you live a material life. What I mean by that is that you're caught on the surface of the conscious mind. So anything that you perceive, you only perceive the object, and the object itself, to a mind caught in this delusion, is a reality. So, and that's the problem with taking spiritual texts literally. Spiritual texts are mostly metaphoric. But if you take it literally, then you're going to miss the underlying philosophical principle that is being expressed. So the image and forms are metaphors for what Abamun is referring to as the fabricative energy of the gods. So the forms that are created by the sages, and how did the sages come about or create the idea to create certain forms? For example, Ptah looks a certain way, Asar looks a certain way, Sekhmet looks a certain way, is that they had to go into certain meditative states and discover these. And then how do you explain or teach to someone something that is not visible to the human senses or not perceptible by the senses? Is that you have to create forms, you have to create images. And when you present the form and the images, then the person, the spiritual initiate, is led to that fabricative energy through the form, through the image. And since that form or image is a what is Abamun referring to as a fabricative energy of the gods, then you discover something about the gods and goddesses. And you discover that also within yourself. So when you discover that within yourself, then you are able to take that fabricative energy and discover its source. And that source that you discover is also yourself. But again, this takes years and years of practice and discipline and controlling the mind and following the teaching as it is intended by the sages, as opposed to not understanding the teaching and following the teaching based upon one's own egoistic idea or egoistic notions. Hence, the Egyptians, perceiving that all superior natures rejoice in the similitude to them of inferior beings, and thus wishing to fill the latter with good through the greatest possible imitation of the former, very properly exhibit a mode of theologizing adapted to the mystic doctrine conceived in the symbols. And what this means is that here, exhibited a mode of theologizing adapted to the mystic doctrine concealed in the symbols. So there is something within the symbols that is of a mystical nature. And what he's saying is that the sages, the priests and priestesses, created a means of disseminating the teaching and the philosophy in a manner that reveals the mystic philosophy, the mystic doctrine, the mystic principle of the symbols. So the teaching mechanism is designed to reveal the secrets and the mysteries of the symbols. And if you have this idea that they did in ancient Egypt that you are starting out in your spiritual journey at a junction in the life of the soul, that the soul in its current condition does not realize, but can be led to realize that greater nature of itself. Then the principle of the soul reflection in the divinities come forth. And if you have this idea that what is meant by inferiority is a kind of a misunderstanding of the true nature of self that can be corrected through spiritual discipline, then the person is led through a specific process that incorporates the symbols with the feeling, with the mind, that allows for a human being to realize that there is something within the symbol that is of the self same nature of oneself. So that the symbol is reflecting something about you that is to be discovered within yourself. And so if you have a system that you don't have symbols, then where are you going to search for that? And that if you don't have symbols, you're going to be led to extroversion and looking outside of yourself and wishing for things to happen in the future. Someone is going to come save you and all of this kind of thing. But if you are led to the understanding that the symbol is actually reflecting something that is internal, then the mind will turn inwards to discover that which is reflecting back to itself through the symbols. And that's why the symbols have a mystic effect on the unconscious mind. It's designed to redirect your RU, which is your karmic basis, to an inward search, to a mystical reality or mystical understanding, which leads to a mystical realization. So the point here is that the manner of teaching is to bring the student to when it says here mystic doctrine, they're talking about something that is beyond the senses. So the manner of teaching of the ancient Egyptian sages is to bring the person to realize something that is beyond the senses and ultimately beyond the mind. But that doctrine, that philosophy that leads to that mystical realization is tied within the symbol. And only the sages, the ones who have special insight, can reveal the mystery of the symbol. Is concealed, is hidden. This is called shetal. And so you need someone, an advanced personality, who has insight into the shetal by their own spiritual journey, and they themselves have been led by sages to reveal the mystery to the mind when it's ready. And when that mind is ready, it's going to take that mystery and turn it on itself, meaning it's going to take that mystic doctrine and turn it on itself. And so you're not looking outside, you're led to give up the extroverted search for fulfillment, which is it, which is futile. It cannot happen. You cannot be fulfilled by anything outside of yourself. So it turns that search for fulfillment inwards. And that's where you discover one's own divine nature and you discover what fulfillment really is. Because once the fulfillment has been achieved, you realize you walk around like as you've lost everything that there is to lose and you've gained everything that there is to gain. So you're at a calmness in your disposition, but this calmness is predicated on a deep and profound mystic realization of the nature of oneself. So the point here is that mystic images are very essential and important and profound in leading the personality towards a deeper understanding and a mystic realization. And once that mystic realization occurs, then you're not confounded by death or tragedy or or anything that happens in the world doesn't disturb you. Doesn't disturb you, or nothing in the world elates you. So you're not elated by anything. You're not disturbed by anything. Not elated by anything. You're not depressed by anything. And that is what is called hetet. That's called peace. Okay, so do I, everyone, come back again next week and continue the mystic teachings of our sage Ab Amon. Do everyone. Hetet.